Hi, I'm Ali. Welcome to Grunge Kitchen, episode 4. This episode we're going to be making a spag bowl and talking about Smashing Pumpkins' album Siamese Dream, a classic from the mid-90s. That was decided in a vote on Instagram you may have seen, where it was a toss-up between Smashing Pumpkins' Siamese Dream and Stone Temple Pilots' Core. We will get to Stone Temple Pilots' Core at some point, but for this episode, Smashing Pumpkins' Siamese Dream was the winner. It's a cold day here in Adelaide today, hence I'm wearing a hoodie. Before I get asked the question, I did not go to Stanford. I wish I had gone to Stanford, but I work for a university in Australia, and I have worked with Stanford and visited campus, hence the uni merch and repping for Stanford today. Fear the tree, I believe, is the motto that goes with this logo. Anyway, spag bowl, brilliant fail-safe recipe. I'm actually going to make it a vegan version using the Alternative Meat Company's mince, which is brilliant, works really well with this. But you can make it with any other vegetarian mince, or you could just use beef mince, and I'll give you the options when I'm walking through this recipe of what I would do differently if you were going to use beef mince. But this is a great recipe, based originally on a Jamie Oliver version, but I've tweaked it, changed it, and it's just a really reliable, tasty recipe, and a few things in it that are a bit different, so I think that's what makes this so good. Really good feedback we've had from people who've tried this, and I encourage you to give it a go. Right, let's get started. So, ingredients we're going to use today. This is the Alternative Meat Company's plant-based mince, available in Coles. I think you can get it in Woolies as well. I need a jar of sun-dried tomato strips in oil. 280 grams is about the size you need. You need some red wine. I'm using this is basically a clean skins that we have open at the moment, which is a Shiraz from Langhorne Creek. It's very tasty. You need about 200 ml of that. 2 tins of plum tomatoes. They work best, but if you can only find chopped tomatoes, just get chopped tomatoes. I've bought the decent quality plum tomatoes just because there were some available. Fresh rosemary, I've just chopped this out of the garden. Some garlic, you need a couple of cloves of garlic, 1 white onion. You're going to need some parmesan to go on it when it's cooked, and secret ingredient, these are stock pots. I am using an imported British stock pot that my mom sent me, and actually I owe Mom for the trick of using these. It's incredible. So I'm using a rich and smoky stock pot that is a Tesco version, but you can get versions of these stock pots in Australia now. And if you can't find one that's a rich and smoky, I would probably use a red wine, something similar to that. But basically this is replacing the bacon in this version of the spag bowl. But obviously if you're going to use bacon as well, because you're doing a meat version, then you probably don't need this. So that's our ingredients. Let's get started. First thing I'm going to do is get these onions and garlic chopped. So I've got 1 onion and 2 garlic cloves. I'm going to show you my magic chopping machine, which is here. So I'm going to turn the camera around for a sec. So I'm going to show you how I chop onion and garlic, which I wouldn't be without this little device, which is a little chopper machine. It's hand powered one, so you don't need to plug it in. But basically I use this for chopping things, and I use it twice in this recipe just for convenience. So I'm just gonna quarter this onion, and I'm gonna chuck this in here with the garlic chunks as well, and fit the lid. And then forgive the noise, it does make a bit of noise, but basically you just pull this until it's chopped. Don't need to do it that much, and as you can see, it has perfectly chopped my onions and my garlic. Now I'm going to use it again in a bit for the sun-dried tomato, but you don't need to wash it out. Everything's going in the same recipe, so don't worry about that. But there is your onion and garlic ready for the next bit of this recipe. As you can see, I've just chopped up the 2 sprigs of rosemary there quite finely. So what I've got here is my wok, because it's a nice deep pan. You could use any big deep pan. I'm using this because it's also got a lid, which is over there. But basically what I've done is put some olive oil in here, and I've thrown in my chopped onions and garlic and the rosemary, and I'm just going to sweat that down for 5 minutes until it has softened. I should add, if you're doing the meat version, you would put the bacon in at this point too, to sweat down with the onion, garlic and rosemary. So while that's cooking off, I'm gonna blitz some dried tomatoes in the same chopper that I just did the onion and garlic in. I haven't washed it out, doesn't matter. But what I have done is drained most of the oil out of this jar of sun-dried tomatoes. I actually keep it. I have a jar to one side of the cooker, which you can see there says tomato oil. And I keep that because you can cook with it for other things, and it just gives everything a nice Mediterranean flavour. It's really easy to use. It's decent quality olive oil that's in there, so you may as well keep it rather than waste it. But what I'm going to do is put this entire jar of sun-dried tomatoes in the chopper, and then I'm going to blitz them to a paste in the same way that I did with the onions and the garlic, and then we're going to use that in the recipe in a little bit. These onions, garlic, rosemary's been sweating down for a few minutes now. It's gone soft, and I'm going to add in the mince. This is the point at which you would add the mince regardless of what kind of mince it is. So mine is this plant-based, which still has the paper on it. And then we're just going to make this mashed up and let it brown in the way that you normally would. So this has just been sizzling away for a few minutes, and I'm going to add 200 ml of red wine. This is the wine I showed you before, and then I'm just going to leave it bubbling in the red wine for a few more minutes while I prep everything else. This is the paste that I've made by blitzing the sun-dried tomatoes in the chopper, and I'm just about to add this to the mince and the onion mixture. Now this has been bubbling on its own in the wine for about 2 to 3 minutes. I'm just going to lob in the sun-dried tomatoes and the 2 tins of plum tomatoes as well, and then I'm just going to give this a big old mix together. Okay, so what you're seeing here is the mixed together spag bowl base, and what I've done, which I needed both hands to do, was break down all of the plum tomatoes so that they're broken into the sauce, as you can see. Now there's 2 routes here. If you're cooking this on a weekend and you've got loads of time, this is extra amazing if you transfer it to the oven at this point and leave it in there for an hour. But if you're doing this on a weekday night like I am, you just want this to simmer for about 20 minutes and you're good. Now the one thing remaining to add at this point is the stock pot. So I'm gonna stir this stock pot in, season it with salt and pepper, and then leave it for 20 minutes. And then we'll be eating it, but you can add it into the oven in an oven-proof dish and leave it for about an hour, and that just gives it an extra depth of flavour that you don't quite get from cooking it on the hob. While that spag bowl's cooking, we're going to talk about Smashing Pumpkins' Siamese Dream, which is just an amazing album. I remember really clearly being at high school in the UK and seeing the video for Today on high rotation on MTV, and it was just, I think it was about 1993. It was 1993 that this album came out, and it was kind of hot off the back of the first kind of big grunge wave with Nevermind and so on, and it had that link of Butch Vig in the producer's chair. Smashing Pumpkins were very much being hyped as the next Nirvana, and there was a lot of hype around them. This wasn't their debut album. Their debut album was Gish, which is also a fantastic album, but this was the album that pushed them into the limelight and got them a hell of a lot of attention. I remember being really kind of just mesmerised by Billy Corgan and this entire sort of aesthetic and the ice cream van that was in the video for Today. It's that song was, you know, it's just, you hear the first few bars and you recognise it immediately because it's just a very distinct sound. But there were so many. I mean, this is one of those albums that you can play from nose to tail, and there isn't a weak spot. There isn't a song that you skip. Forgive the noise of my dog Finn having a shake there in the laundry. But it's a really consistent album, and there's so many good songs on it. I also particularly associate this album and this Smashing Pumpkins period with going to college, even though I actually went to college in 1995 and this album was a few years old by then. But there was a whole group of amazing people at college who I kind of became friends with as a result of a mutual love for Smashing Pumpkins. So shout out to John Nash, Richard Pearce, Macca, my friend Anna Tyler, who I'd known from school, all of those lot who were at New College, who were fabulous fun, and Andy Faz, who's now actually living in Seattle. I'm very jealous. Them lot I kind of associate with Smashing Pumpkins. They have very fond memories for me. But also, weirdly, when I got to university, I ended up doing philosophy as joint honours in my bachelor's degree. And weirdly, one of the assignments in the first year was to take a song that you were really fond of and to critically analyse in a philosophical way the lyrics. And I picked Soma by Smashing Pumpkins, which is off this album. It's still one of my favourite songs of all time. Just beautiful, soft melodies and amazing kind of out of this world kind of sounds. That song's one that I've listened to often when I'm in a state of emotional distress or need to be soothed, and it's just a special song, but from a very special album. And props to my philosophy tutors at University of Wolverhampton in the UK who set that as a philosophy assignment. I remember my entire class just being thrilled that we were given this kind of assignment that was based on songs that we loved, and for that reason, Siamese Dream and Smashing Pumpkins is really, really precious and reminds me of that era of my life. For many years, I've wanted to get a tattoo of the Smashing Pumpkins heart on my wrist, and I keep thinking about doing it. And while we've been in lockdown, had lots of thoughts. There's a couple of tattoos I still want to get, and that probably is one that at some point soon I would get. It's not, there's not many bands or that I would really be keen to get, but there's also a Smiths tattoo I want to get, but I'll talk about that at some other point, I'm sure. But the Smashing Pumpkins heart is likely to land on my wrist at some point soon. Anyway, listen to it. It's incredible, and it goes nicely with spaghetti bolognese. Can't recommend it highly enough, and it really does. You can probably tell by the amount I'm smiling. It takes me back to a really amazing time in my life. They tell you that college is your best years. You don't believe them, but it's true. So enjoy. If you've never listened to it, you really are. It's just an amazing album, and you should treat yourself. And we'll see you. No, I won't say goodbye just yet. We will check in on this spag bowl, and yeah, we'll see how it turned out. Got carried away there. Anyway, Smashing Pumpkins, Siamese Dream, check it out. I should also add, I was very lucky. One of the best gigs of my life was seeing Smashing Pumpkins at Brixton Academy. I think it was 1996, 96-ish, 95, 96, maybe 97. Don't think it was that late. But seen them a couple of times. But Brixton Academy, that particular tour, which I think was around, coincided with Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness, was amazing. One of the best gigs of my life. Brixton Academy, very special venue. Smashing Pumpkins in that venue, just magic. Top 10 for me. Been to many gigs, but that's top 10. Anyway, I've been very lucky, and I hope one day I might get to see them again, though I'd like to see them with the original lineup, I think. Right, I'm off to check on my spag bowl. I'll see you later. Here we have the spaghetti bolognese. It has been simmering for about 20 minutes at this point, and with it being plant-based mince, it really doesn't need much more than that. It's cooked, but the longer you have to simmer it, the deeper the flavour will be. With cooking it how we have with the sun-dried tomatoes in there and this range of flavors. It's actually really tasty anyway. But if you have time, the longer you simmer this, the more intense and deep the flavor will be. It's just a great recipe. We're gonna have this with some pasta. I've got my pasta boiling there just next to it, and some garlic bread as well. And I will come back to you in a bit to show you it plated. And here's the finished product. In an act of outrageous rebellion, you can see I have actually served it with fusilli pasta rather than spaghetti, because that's what we had in the house. It doesn't really matter. And I've just added a bit of Parmesan cheese on the top there. There is heaps in this batch. You can see there's an absolute heap there still. So I will be freezing some of that. It freezes really well. And so that's a good way to do some meal prep for later meals. Anyway, that's your spag bol. Thank you for joining me on Grunge Kitchen for another episode, and we will be back soon with episode 5. Not sure what's going to be yet, but watch this space, and thanks for joining us.